Good morning to folks who are trickling in. We'll get started in just a moment. Thank you for making the time today to talk with us and hear us. Good morning, folks. We'll get started in just a moment. We're going to start right at 8 sharp, so just a few seconds. Thank you for making time today. All right. Well, welcome, folks. We're excited for today's conversation. Uh, my name is Karma Mahmood. I am CHI's Managing Director for Partnerships and Development. I lead our work in thinking through who are the partners and organizations that we should be working with and to really elevate the health and well-being of Coloradans folks in the Rocky Mountain region. I'm excited. I'm really excited for today's conversation. But before we get started, and as folks are trickling in, your nice hot coffees and teas, I'd love for us to start with if you could drop your name and organization and favorite underrated natural space in Colorado in the chat. This could be a place you like to go hiking, a place you like to uh, spend time with family, any and all the above. Mine is actually Pawnee National Grasslands, which I think is probably one of the most underrated places in the state. Um, it's east of Fort Collins and kind of around the Greeley-ish area. It's super beautiful. There's buttes out there and uh, wildflowers around this time of the year. It's a super beautiful spot. So just a couple things before we get started. Uh, if you're not familiar with the Colorado Health Institute, so CHI, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan health institute. We're based in Denver. CHI, our mission and vision is really centered on strengthening communities and systems with trusted analyses and collaborative solutions to improve health. Another thing that I want to mention, and the way that we drive that is through three things. We answer the critical questions, we make sense of complex issues, and we support others to reach actionable solutions. And today, I think, is a really prime example of uh, doing all three of those, and we're excited to share a bit about a report and a series of research that our team has worked on. And we've got a really great panel who we'll introduce later that are going to dive into this as well. But I also just want to mention we have a body of work, and my colleague Emily or Maggie are going to drop a link in the chat to our Acclimate Colorado body of work, which is really centered on the intersection of climate and health. Um, and if you're ever interested in learning more about that, please feel free to reach out to me directly on ways that we can potentially partner or support you in your work. And then again, really quick, the these are CHI's hosts for the day. I'm going to pass it off to Maggie and Emily in just a second here. But really quick, just to kind of orient folks, we're going to have uh, Maggie and Emily are going to be sharing a bit about our research, which was some research that we did with support from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation on behalf of the Colorado Division of Insurance. It was a two-part research project that really explored that intersection of wildfire risk, community resilience, and ways that we can protect homeowners and communities from wildfires. And in that work, we really engaged stakeholders across sectors, whether it's folks that are working in the insurance industry or working in local government or um, folks in the legislative or executive branch. And really excited for our panel today who represent sort of those different wings. Um, and what we're going to do is talk through some of our main takeaways, and then we're going to jump into a panel discussion just after that. And then as you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature, or you can drop questions in the chat, and we will plan to facilitate a panel with our guests here today, and we'll be taking questions at the end before we close out. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Maggie, who's going to start us off with some key findings from our report.
Thanks, Karam, and thanks all for joining us here today. As we talk about climate insurance and health, we want to highlight that wildfires are increasing in size, frequency, and intensity, and risk is growing for many Colorado communities. These changes in wildfire impact insurance access and health. Mental stress, displacement, and rising insurance rates all pose challenges for Coloradans. State agencies, policymakers, and insurers, some of whom we'll be hear from today, all have a role to play in understanding and reducing wildfire risk and its impact on health and insurance. For our audience members joining us today, what brought you here? Go ahead and please share your name and comment in the chat if you'd like. We'd love to hear who is here and what's on your mind. CHI explored the relationship between wildfires, homeowners insurance, and health in a first of its kind report. This was to identify opportunities to reduce wildfire risk and improve insurance access for Colorado communities. CHI's two-part report, Wildfire Risk, Our Homes, and Our Health, focused on risk analysis and stakeholder insights on insurance industry opportunities. This work came from a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the largest national philanthropy focused exclusively on health and health equity, and enabled CHI to meet with 33 stakeholders representing groups across different levels of departments and organizations, state legislators, wildfire mitigation organizations, and people directly impacted by wildfire. CHI asked what's happening in current wildfire mitigation efforts, as well as opportunities for government agencies and the insurance industry to enhance resilience. So why focus on wildfire? The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation identified the insurance industry as a source of additional investment in community development. CHI was one of 6 Robert Wood Johnson Foundation grantees nationwide, and the only grantee representing the Mountain West. CHI was selected to contribute to the collective knowledge of the intersection between climate hazards, insurance, and health. Other grantees represented coastal states, which experience different climate hazards, coastal flooding, and hurricanes. The western half of the United States, on the other hand, experiences much higher wildfire risk compared to these other regions. So our work here focused uniquely on wildfires. While we know that hail is a large concern for insurers due to the associated costs and is another climate hazard of concern, wildfires directly affect both the insurance industry and the health and well-being of Coloradans. And that is the focus of our work and discussion today. Wildfires have increased in size, frequency, and intensity in recent decades. Colorado's 20 largest and most destructive wildfires have occurred since 2001, with most occurring since 2016. Colorado has a diverse and complex wildfire landscape, and community wildfire risk depends on an interaction of several factors. This includes vegetation type, terrain, weather elements such as wind and drought conditions, and human interactions with and activities in the environment. People may think that wildfires are exclusively in mountainous and forested areas, but this map shows that every wildfire in the past decade, with larger dots showing larger fires, and you can see that there's a lot happening in both suburbia and in the grasslands. Wildfires impact health and insurance access. Wildfire has a direct connection to health. Home is health. Home is a key factor in people's physical and mental health and well-being. People spend most of their time at their home. It's often their shelter and a safe space to sleep, eat, and recharge the next day. But wildfires can damage and destroy homes, and wildfire smoke can leach into homes' walls and into residents' clothing. Wildfire smoke can also make anyone exposed sick, especially people with certain health conditions such as asthma or heart disease, people who are pregnant, and young children. Some people also face greater barriers in preparing for and recovering from wildfire. For example, people with limited English proficiency will have difficulty accessing services or understanding information in their communities, such as public notices about environmental contamination or evacuation routes for wildfire. Now I'll pass it to Emily.
Thank you, Maggie. So what is the problem? Well, property insurance companies are actually losing money. In 2023, insurers lost money on homeowners coverage in 18 states, including Colorado. This is more than a third of the country. And in Colorado specifically, the average annual loss in the past 10 years on property insurance was 13%. So what happens when insurance companies lose money? They reduce the amount of risk they take on with their insurance policies. So they raise premiums, they reduce coverage, and sometimes they pull out of areas entirely. So this has led to homeowners insurance availability and affordability challenges. Between 2019 and 2022, the average Colorado homeowner saw a 52% increase in their homeowners insurance. Some people are even receiving non-renewals, which is when an insurance company decides not to renew a policy when it expires. There are also some parts of Colorado where certain insurance companies won't write new policies. So what are some of the reasons behind these insurance affordability and availability challenges? Well, for one, increasing frequency and severity of climate hazards. Colorado experiences both wildfire and hail, making it costly to insure homes here. Nationally, severe convective storms, think damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes, actually cause the highest insured losses of any climate hazard, and we get a lot of hail in Colorado. Another reason is rising reinsurance rates. So insurance companies actually have insurance too, called reinsurance, and these costs have also increased. Wildfire risk is increasing, and development in wildfire-prone areas is also increasing. So together, this means a greater potential for property loss. And another reason is rising rebuilding costs, such as materials and labor. Basically, everything that insurance companies pay for is going up in cost. And due to the multifaceted nature of this problem, solutions are really going to require collaborative action across multiple sectors and geographies. So what is the opportunity here? It doesn't really matter where you sit. Everyone wants to reduce the risk of climate hazards because it benefits everyone. We have strong data, research, and tools from groups like the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety and the Colorado State Forest Service on mitigating the risk and impact of wildfire. So there's a strong evidence base for mitigation efforts. The Forest Service also uses the phrase all lands, all hands, which really speaks to the need for collaborative action across jurisdictions. And it's this kind of collaborative action across sectors and jurisdictions that's going to make the biggest impact. So state agencies and policymakers, the insurance industry, local governments and organizations, and individuals all have a role to play. So here's a few examples of what those roles look like. Many insurance companies use the outputs from third-party models to assess risk and determine rates. Stakeholders describe these third-party models as a black box. That is, there's little transparency into these algorithms and the factors on which they're built. Right now, there's little incentive for homeowners to do mitigation because it isn't clear how it'll impact their insurance premiums. Colorado could consider standardizing some of the factors, such as parcel and community level mitigation factors that risk assessments must consider. Stakeholders really emphasize that Colorado needs to work collaboratively with the insurance industry to maintain insurance availability. So the state has to carefully consider the impact of additional regulations. However, increasing standardization through incentive-based initiatives and a non-punitive environment for insurance carriers may reduce risk while maintaining a favorable regulatory environment. Information sharing could also be improved between insurance carriers and their customers to improve risk management, the process of identifying, assessing, and controlling risks. If people know how their rates are determined and the impact of mitigation efforts, they'll have more of an incentive to take action. And finally, mitigation efforts are needed at community and parcel levels too. Local organizations are well positioned to conduct outreach at local events or community gatherings to share information and encourage action. If you have a resource that you'd like to share with others to help them stay up to date on the evolving landscape, please feel free to share links in the chat. And now I'm going to pass it over to Karam and our panel.
Thanks, Emily. And just as a reminder, as folks may have questions about the report that Maggie and Emily just touched on, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A feature for that as well, and the two of them can answer questions on that at the end. But now, without further ado, I'd love to quickly introduce our panelists, and we're gonna open with a question for all three of them, and then kind of popcorn between the three of them with some specific questions for each, and then close with a question for all of them as well. So really quick, the Carol Walker, I'm joined by Carol Walker, who is the Executive Director of the Rocky Mountain Insurance Information Association, or RMIIA, which is a nonprofit trade association representing auto, home, and business insurance companies in Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. Their primary mission is helping consumers better understand insurance, and is a key, they're really a key community wildfire partner, thought partner in Colorado, in the area. For over 2 decades, Carol has really assisted and thought through insurance recovery and rebuilding after devastating wildfires. Welcome, Carol. And then we're joined by Commissioner Michael Conway he is Colorado's insurance commissioner, leading the Division of Insurance at the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies. Under his leadership, the division has really navigated complex challenges in the property insurance market, including affordability and availability in high-risk wildfire zones. And he has been at the forefront of really launching and thinking through Colorado's FAIR Plan, which we'll hear a little bit about, and advancing consumer protections amidst some of these risks that we were talking about. And then Senator Cleve Simpson, good to see you again. I know we've hosted you on a panel before. He represents Colorado Senate District 6, which is a largely rural district that includes many wildfire-prone areas and areas that are agriculturally impacted as well. Fourth-generation farmer and rancher, he brings his deep firsthand knowledge of the challenges facing rural communities in Colorado. In the legislature, Senator Simpson has championed wildfire resilience through bills such as Senate Bill 11 on wildfire detection and House Bill 1182, among many different efforts. And he consistently works across the aisle to advance long-term solutions to problems like this. So let's open with a question for the three of you. First of all, you all come at this issue from a different angle, whether it's kind of legislative policy, or we're thinking about regulation, or we're thinking about insurance and consumers and insurance industry, but you're all on the front lines of addressing risk to communities fundamentally. And it's Wildfire Awareness Month this May. When you think about the wildfire season, just in general, what is top of mind for you right now in your work for reducing risk? And we can start with Senator Simpson. Looks like you're leaning forward.
I was looking at Commissioner Conway, thinking he was jumping in. But for me, like, I think about the challenges, both trying to get education out and awareness, and particularly for me, for largely the southern half of the state this year. Snowpack was well below normal and average, and you touched on a Karam, but I farm and ranch, so I get water out of the Rio Grande system, and it's not going to be anywhere near an average runoff this year. And that's really been the trend since 2002. It's just largely snowpack, and climate change is real. This isn't drought anymore. This is truly, from my perspective, the airification of the West. So, and then you overlay that with, we had really an unprecedented moisture event the first 10 days of May that set the stage. All right, people will become nonchalant. They have the tendency to do that. Oh, drought's over. You actually got really good moisture 1st of May, which means things are going to grow. And if you turn unseasonably dry here in June, July, and August, it just set the stage for, catastrophe. And trying to keep people focused and educated and thoughtful about, how you how do you protect yourselves and your communities will be first and foremost in my thought process going forward.
Carol, you want to go next?
I always bow to you, Commissioner.
Okay, I'll be quick. So you know, just kind of jumping off where the senator just left it. I flew in on what is today? Today is Thursday. I flew in back from California on Tuesday. Was speaking at the Global Insurance Symposium, and it struck me as I was landing at DIA how green everything was. And it's exactly for the reasons that the senator just touched on. Right, we got a lot of rain. We got a lot of moisture. It was rain along the Front Range. It was snow up in the mountains at the beginning of the month. And what that means is that we're gonna have a lot of grasslands. We're gonna have a lot of stuff that could potentially burn later on this year. And I think for me, when I go out and I talk to folks about wildfire risk in particular, one of the things that we try and remind people about is really how long the wildfire season is in Colorado. Right. When we get to the fall, it's not over. It's honestly, candidly, really the most dangerous part of the year, right? Because that's when wind kicks up. And if we do have a long, hot summer, that's when things will be very, very dry. And the combination of drought and dryness in general with wind is the recipe for disaster. So it's really reminding folks of how long the wildfire season is here. When we get to the fall, when we get to winter, it isn't over. It really is the most dangerous part of the season. And they need to be mindful about what's happening. And then we need to have conversations about how we make the state safer, right? Both from a mitigation standpoint and have at the forefront of our thought process conversations about affordability and how we bring affordability to the forefront. Carol?
Thanks, Commissioner. And as the Commissioner knows, I worry about everything. So this is the time of year that I start worrying the most. We already on Sunday had tornadoes touch down in Elbert, Arapahoe, and Adams County, losing dozens of structures. And we really have a wildfire year now, as the Commissioner said, not just a season, but as those temperatures warm up and we enter into the height of severe weather and wildfire season, it really is the time that we need to get the word out to folks is what can they do to both protect their property and their finances and be insurance ready. So that's a huge part of my job is trying to get that message out. And unfortunately, when you see the tornadoes here, the deadly tornadoes in the Midwest, and even the wildfires, historic wildfires we had in California in January, these are teachable moments. So anytime that we have events, we know going into wildfire season now is a time to get people to do the right thing to protect their properties. As Maggie and Emily alluded to in the beginning, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety does have wildfire prepared home mitigation standards and fortified standards for hail, that if we can get them to scale, that really starts to impact insurability. So as we address our affordability and availability issues, our challenges, we are in the hardest insurance market in a generation. And how do we help people that are really struggling, both with higher premiums and with access to insurance? We have real pockets of that. How can we help them not just look at it as an insurance solution, but a mitigation, reduce the risk solution? So I think what we've been talking about, both with the senator and other legislators and the speakers on the call and Commissioner Conway, is our common ground really is how do we reduce the risk, get it at scale, get it measurable. House Bill 1182, I think there's a lot of opportunity in there to really have people doing meaningful, verifiable mitigation, both on their home and at a community scale. So I really think that that's where we're all heading. And it's going to take a village. It's going to take all of us working together really to find solutions. And so I think, unfortunately, as we are in severe weather season, now's the time to be educating folks. Now's the time they're paying attention.
Yeah, thank you all, and I can appreciate the framing of this as it's been a wildfire year. I know we've been talking about things as a wildfire season, and I can also I think a statistic or a way of framing this issue that was new to me in our analysis was all 64 counties in Colorado have experienced a wildfire at some point, big or small. So I think it's just important to kind of think about this as a moment for Carol, I liked you calling these teachable moments when these things happen. So to jump into some individual questions, and Carol, you alluded to kind of working with the senator and commissioner and cross branch and across industry. It's really great to see that systems and cross systems approach. Commissioner Conway, so you're leading during complex moment in history for property insurance, and you're juggling consumer protection and sort of regulatory stability and risk all at once from wildfires and of course other natural things like hail. How is the Division of Insurance navigating kind of this rising tension between market stability and coverage for community, especially in some of the more high risk wildfire areas? And now also with more frequent hailstorms, I know we had a conversation about a year ago and hail came up as sort of an issue as well. So how are you kind of like navigating that tension and that balance between those things?
Yeah, Karen, thanks for the question. And I should have started by saying thanks to CHI for putting this together too. So it is a tumultuous time, and I'd probably be remiss to not note that it's not just a tumultuous time on the property side, and it's going to be a tumultuous time on the health side too. The bill that Congress voted through yesterday and sent over to the Senate. And I promise I won't spend too much time talking about health, but I feel like I've got to since that bill just got voted on. Actually, this morning, not last night, this morning. Candidly, folks, it's a scary bill. It will rip away healthcare coverage from someplace in the tune of 22 to 24 million Americans. Folks, that's not fraud, waste, and abuse, and it's not moderation. It's going to be a scary, scary thing. But now, Karen, to your question about the property insurance market, you know we spent the better part of the last year and a half going into this last legislative session, having town halls, both virtual town halls and then traveling around the state. We were lucky enough to have the senator come to one of our town halls in Durango, just talking to folks about the challenges that they were seeing in the homeowners insurance market in general. And the main message that we really tried to push through to folks is that our door was wide open. Our door was wide open to have conversations both with the industry, but obviously with individual consumers and folks like the senator about potential solutions that we could bring, that any solutions that anybody thought could be solutions to the affordability and availability issues that we have in the state. But we were also really clear, Karen, that if we didn't hear solutions that we wouldn't be shy about bringing ideas to the forefront. House Bill 1182, which we were lucky enough to have the senator on, was a key part of that conversation, and it was really a lot of what Emily was touching on early on in her comments about potential solutions that we can bring to the market about kind of transparency and how we can build more certainty around the models. That's what 1182 is about, but that's just a step. We have challenges on the affordability front that we have to face, and those challenges are driven by not just wildfire, hail too. And so we're going to have a comprehensive approach to finding solutions. That's what House Bill 1302 that the speaker was on was designed to do. It was really a kind of innovative, forward-thinking approach to finding solutions for the affordability challenges that we have in the state. We're going to bring that bill back in some iteration, as I've had many conversations with Carol about. We don't like to lose at the division, so we're gonna bring that bad boy back, and we're gonna find a way to get that through. But it's gonna take a whole lot of conversation, and to find the right solutions for those affordability challenges that we still have in the state.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'm glad you mentioned House Bill 1182, and I know there were a couple others. I also just want to acknowledge welcome Speaker McCluskey, and thank you for your for being here today, and the work that you're doing as well. Senator Simpson, you've worked on some of this key wildfire legislation during the session, including House Bill 82, which is centered on that kind of transparency in how insurers assess and communicate wildfire risk. As a legislator, and I know there are other bills that you're working on that are relevant to wildfire and community. As a legislator, what do you see as sort of the most important levers that Colorado can pull right now to protect communities before, during, and after wildfires in your role?
Yeah, thanks, Carmen. And to Commissioner Conway's point, I also would like to thank CHI. They've really been a valuable resource for me but even before my legislative career. So connected with you all at least a decade ago. So thanks for everything you all do. The levers that the General Assembly have access to, for me, tend to be focused on incentivizing people. There was a bill in my very first session about tax credits for fire hardening your property. And Carol touched on how do you like, all right, what role does the General Assembly play in expanding the pace and scale of both education and action at an individual level, at a community level, even at a regional level. So always interested, and it's a bit ironic given the budget challenges for this year. We actually have a Wildfire Matters interim committee that routinely will meet during the interim to have some of these discussions. But this session, given some of the budgetary challenges, that committee won't be meeting this summer. So even more important than as individual legislators to be engaged in the community, having these discussions. Appreciate Commissioner Conway and the opportunity to visit, with my constituents in Durango last summer. I was in Bayfield Saturday, at an event talking to the community, and I actually highlighted if there was, we talked about all the things that happened in the General Assembly, and I highlighted there were really a couple of things that I was disappointed that I didn't find, the right avenue to really offer solutions in this space of affordability, and the commissioner touched on it. I have on too often occasions where constituents call and say my coverage has actually been dropped and I can't find coverage. So appreciate this is really a compelling issue that needs an abundance of thought and trying to craft a path forward. But the legislature for me is about education, incentives, being supportive, pace and scale of not even just individual, but there's a Rocky Mountain Restoration Initiative, the National Wild Turkey Foundation and U.S. Forest Service and State Forest Service collectively, again, at this, trying to increase the impact, the magnitude and the scale and the pace of mitigating, the condition of our forests that really kind of drive this overall discussion. So always interested in being engaged in those conversations and really trying to craft a path forward that gives us a much different measurable outcome than where we're at today.
Thank you, Senator. And I think that's a good segue to a question for Carol. Carol, you've been really at the forefront in helping people understand how the insurance industry is responding to rising wildfire risk and how what's changing for homeowners, property owners. I was wondering if you could share what are like one or two top things that homeowners, it could be more than that, but what are some top things that homeowners need to know about how insurance works in the context of wildfire risk? And I'd say tied to that, like you talked about communication being important. What can insurers do differently to build trust and communicate that kind of evolving risk more clearly with consumers and with community?
Yeah, thank you. And I do think that I think CHI as well. I think the beginning of this session really highlights the fragility of the property insurance market right now. Even the ripple effect of the California wildfires and the lack of insurance companies making a profit as the risk increases really puts us in the perfect storm at a tipping point where the public policy decisions we're making are important. In the midst of those wildfires, California's insurance market was really broken. And they had made some bad public policy decisions that really pushed it over the edge and pushed insurance companies out. Here in Colorado, we have real opportunities in working together to not have that happen as we look to actually reduce the risk, do the right thing when it comes to, we have a new resiliency code board that is looking at a WUI code to really try to put good building standards in place to increase mitigation. At the same time, with House Bill 1182, I think we had some good back and forth negotiation where, it started as a bill for us where it would have been really challenging to keep the modelers here. And we've heard the concerns. We know that people are really concerned about the models, the transparency of the models. How is mitigation action taken into consideration? I think with House Bill 1182, where it ended up was standards in place for the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety and Wildfire Prepared Home, really triggering that program to come into the state. So people will have certification programs, know what the insurance companies are looking for when it comes to mitigation. So when we're in this fragile market, first and foremost, we worry about people cutting corners on insurance. Just as a practical standpoint, when I talked about being insurance ready, talk to your insurance professional about what coverage do I have? What does it cover? What doesn't it cover? What are my deductibles? We have wind hail deductibles in Colorado that are higher on that roof, percentage deductibles, or even $5,000 or more deductibles. So really, I think that the biggest thing consumers can do is making sure in these challenging times when they're crunching the budget to still not cut corners on insurance as we're working as, the state and as the insurance industry to try to do everything we can to bring down rates. Those aren't silver bullet. Those are going to be mitigation solutions. And then understand that your insurance company does care about that mitigation. So doing everything you can to do the DIY projects and to really, do any home hardening, replace that roof with a fire and hail resistant roof. I think those are all things they can do. And then also there are lessons learned out of all of these tragic wildfires. For example, coming out of both the East Troublesome Fire and the Marshall Fire, we passed House Bill 1174, working with the commissioner, where people will have more coverage available to them and a mandatory offer of more replacement cost coverage, building code upgrade coverage, inflation guard. Those are something now where consumers will have in bold type on their policy, this extended coverage is available to you to even address those underinsurance questions. So I think a long answer to your short question is, I think first and foremost, people need to be understanding how their coverage works, why we're in this situation where we're seeing some affordability and availability challenges, and then really making some smart coverage decisions and smart mitigation decisions. And then I'm sure the commissioner will dive into the new Colorado Fair Plan. I do serve on the board of that. And really offering an insurer of last resort for those people who are truly struggling with availability. We opened the doors to that in April, and that is now an option for those folks, especially in those high-risk wildfire areas that are having problems with access.
Thank you, Carol. Commissioner, do you want to share a little bit about the FAIR Plan?
I mean, Carol touched on the high points. So the FAIR Plan is the fair access to insurance requirements, Carol said. So it's an insurer of last resort for folks that can't find homeowners insurance coverage in the what we refer to as the admitted market, folks. So the admitted market is the big insurance companies that you see advertising on TV all the time, the State Farms, Allstates of the world. But I think that the key for folks to realize when it comes to the FAIR Plan, the reason why we worked so hard to get that passed back in 2023, and big thanks again to the speaker, she carried that bill as well, was because we were worried about a potential availability crisis that was coming our way. And we saw the market concentrating amongst the biggest insurers in the state. And we were worried if any of those big insurers started to pull back in certain pockets of the state, we would have availability issues. People wouldn't be able to find homeowners insurance coverage. And if you can't find homeowners insurance coverage, then you can't buy and sell homes. And that has obviously a direct, very meaningful, bad impact on the real estate market. So we were trying to get in front of that problem. We didn't have availability issues back in 2023, but we were worried that they might be coming. So we passed the FAIR Plan in order to get in front of that issue. But I think the key for folks to realize is that the FAIR Plan is not going to be a solution for the affordability challenges that we have in the state. And it really shouldn't be a solution for the affordability challenges that we have in the state. I do think if we don't find ways to address the fact that people can't afford their homeowners insurance coverage, so kind of to the point that Carol was alluding to, they're making cuts in their homeowners insurance coverage. They're dropping coverages. They're increasing deductibles to places where they really probably aren't affordable if they do have any kind of big disaster that hits their home. If we don't find affordability solutions, whether it's 1302, the next iteration of 1302 that we'll be bringing back next session, or something else, legislators are going to start to look at the FAIR Plan as an affordability solution. That is a really, really dangerous thing to have happen, right? Because if the FAIR Plan starts to compete against the private market, then we will have serious issues with the private market staying in Colorado. So we have to find other ways to drive affordability, right? We have to tackle the wildfire risk that we have. We also have to tackle the hail risk that we have in Colorado. 1302 is designed to do exactly that, right? We wanted to take some of the risk from insurance companies for wildfire risk. We wanted to help people put hail resistant roofs on their homes, provide them grants to do that. Those are still good core ideas that we're going to bring back. We got to figure out new ways to pay for them, so we can get Senator Simpson and others on board. But we're going to do that, right? We're going to be at the table having conversations about ways to make sure that we can build a sustainable solution going forward, because we have to. Right. Otherwise, we will continue to have people calling Senator Simpson, his constituents calling, and constituents calling legislators really across the state about the affordability challenges that they have. And just to bring it back to where I started the conversation, Karam, so the insurance market across the board is about to have incredibly robust affordability challenges hitting it. We already have them on the homeowner side, but the health insurance side, we're about to be back to the 2016, 2017 years where we had huge rate increases and we had the subsidy cliff back in place, where people are dropping coverage because they simply can't afford it anymore. Their health insurance coverage is all of a sudden going to be the same as cost as their mortgage insurance coverage, or their mortgage coverage, which includes their homeowner's insurance. So there's affordability challenges that are about to hit Coloradans across the board. And if we don't have solutions, if we don't come together and we have meaningful solutions that we're bringing forward, we're going to have a lot of very, very upset Coloradans on our hands.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I've got one final question. Maybe we lightning round this so then we can open it up to questions from the audience. But question for all of you. Let's fast forward 5 years. If we've made real progress on this issue, what's changed and who made it happen? And you can say that in as many or as few words as you want, but let's give let's say about a minute for each of the three of you.
Yeah, I just start. If we've made real progress, I don't have constituents calling me saying they've dropped my coverage. I can't get coverage anywhere. And then secondly, to Commissioner Conway's point, we've reached at least made progress in affordability so that at least those people have coverage and they can afford it. Who made that happen is going to be a collective effort, both with the legislature, with the industry, with the commissioner's office, and more broadly, the opportunities at a federal level with either their engagement or lack of engagement and mitigation on a large scale. Again, a scale and pace that's meaningful and can help drive affordability and accessibility, whether, again, it's watershed level mitigation efforts, early detection efforts, rapid response efforts, all those things. I think collectively 5 years from now, if we've made progress in that, I'll stop getting those calls. Well, 5 years from now, I won't be a senator, so I won't be getting those calls, I hope. But anyway, that would be my measure of success.
Carol, you next.
I never thought I would say this, but looking at our hurricane states, there is optimism. And to the commissioner's point about 1302, I think the real common ground in that House bill was that mitigation at scale matters. We've seen that in the Strengthen Alabama program, which 1302 was really creating the Strengthen Colorado program. So I hope in 5 years, we find a way to help people make that investment in mitigation, especially those people who truly can't afford it, both for hail resistant, impact resistant roofs to a fortified standard. We have a wildfire prepared home program here that's working with our great mitigation community programs. They're helping people not just individuals, but neighborhoods really live up to that meaningful mitigation. And I think that that's where I hope we are in 5 years, where we're starting to see some risk reduction. We know, like from Hurricane Ian a few years ago, what we really saw in those results is less homes damaged because of those mitigation at scale. So I think that's what I hope, that's what's going to keep the market here. And that's going to keep insurers here, not just finding insurance solutions. Let's crack down on insurers. Let's make them artificially suppress rates like they did in California. Let's not let them use forward modeling at a time we can't use historic claims data. I think that what I really hope in the many, many conversations that we have with the division and with legislators is that we find those common ground mitigation solutions and have an investment making them happen. I know even at a time that the state's struggling with its budget.
So Karen, I think for me, if in 5 years the folks at the Fair Plan are twiddling their thumbs because they don't have anything to do, that will be a very, very good thing. Right. And because that will mean that we've got the market in an incredibly stable place. We've got people that have multiple options across the state to buy homeowners insurance coverage, and that it's affordable. Right. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what we're pushing for. That's what 1302 was designed to do. Right. I talked about that over and over and over again, that I want the folks at the Fair Plan to be bored out of their damn minds. And that's going to continue to be what we push for. Right, because everything that the senator said and Carol said, I agree with. Right, those are all parts of the solution, but we really have to find those affordability solutions. And I absolutely agree with the senator as well, that it will take all of us. Right, we've all got to be willing to sit down at the table, make meaningful compromises, make compromises that sometimes hurt, and sometimes give up on things that you care about and that you think might be the right way to go. And that's going to be what we continue to do at the division.
Well, thank you all for that. I think that's all very sort of a practical vision for where I think we want to head in the next 5 years. So I'm gonna transition us to Q&A from the audience. We've got a couple questions through the Q&A feature. I think there's one in the chat, and I also. I'd love to invite, I know Speaker Julie McCluskey is on the call as well. Before we jump into the questions, if there's anything that you, Speaker, would like to share on some of your efforts at the Golden Dome before we jump into some of these questions.
Thank you. I really appreciate this webinar today. My gratitude to the Colorado Health Institute. What a great opportunity it is for us to gather and think about next steps, as well as reflect on our accomplishments and the needs that are facing us in communities across the state. I really particularly want to lift up a comment that Commissioner Conway just made, that it will take all of us. You know, represented on this panel are three very dedicated, committed leaders, each from different interests when it comes to policy making that is going to move our state forward in both, you know, creating more affordability on the insurance market, protecting homes, lives, and property, and certainly, you know, protecting this great state, what we love so much about Colorado. And I believe that the work we've done with the FAIR Plan, and then the study that we launched last year to take a harder look at what we might be able to do for our HOAs and lodges across the state, those multifamily housing developments and the property insurance increases that they are facing. What more could we be doing? And the progress this year with House Bill 1182 was critically important. But we failed to get the bill that Commissioner Conway referred to earlier on property insurance. We failed to get that across the finish line. So I think I'm very eager to learn from all of you and, you know, hear what can we do, what do we need to change in that approach to really provide something new and innovative in this state, because same old isn't going to work. We're going to have to change our approach. Our insurance carrier partners have been terrific in coming alongside, providing input, being willing to embrace change as well. And I hope that even through this conversation today, there's some new nuggets or ideas that might emerge, ways that we can continue to partner to try and address the needed changes. But I would also say that with some of the uncertainties now at the federal level, the implications of federal policy in this space is also critically important. And it may be just as necessary and needed that we all raise our voices together in unity in trying to address the federal approach to what's happening in our nation when it comes to insurance, to see if there isn't more that we can do at that level. So thanks again for having me today, and really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you being here. We've got a couple questions, some through the Q&A feature and a couple in the chat. I'm gonna try and see if we can get through them, and they're good questions. I'm gonna go in order of when they were submitted. So there's a question from Heather Massey in the chat, and it was, how much do mitigation efforts by homeowners influence their eligibility for homeowners insurance?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Depends. Yeah. So, Carol will jump in here too. It depends on the individual insurance company, and what are referred to as underwriting standards, which just means the guidelines for when an insurance company will or won't write insurance coverage. But I think one of the key parts of Senator Simpson's Bill 1182 was really trying to bring transparency forward about what mitigation steps actually matter. Not necessarily from an availability standpoint, but at least directionally from an availability standpoint, but also from an affordability standpoint too, right? We want people to understand what discounts are available to them if they do take certain mitigation steps. So that was a key part of 1182. I was really making sure that the insurance companies are putting that information out there, making it as easily as accessible as possible. But I think the other key part of 1182, or one of the other key parts of 1182, is making sure that the mitigation steps that property owners take are accounted for in the models that are really governing everything that's happening in our markets in the homeowner space. So those third-party models that Carol touched on, the third-party models are really what 1182 was designed around. And it was really designed around making sure that if you're a homeowner and you've taken mitigation steps, or if you're a community and you've taken mitigation steps, if you've spent tens of thousands of dollars, if not, there's some counties out there that are spending millions of dollars on mitigation. We want to make sure that information and that work is being accounted for in the models, and then that should make it more available for folks, homeowners insurance more available for folks.
I'll just add, Commissioner Conway touched what I was going to, making sure there are opportunities for mitigation at an individual property owner's level, but also at a community and truly at a regional level. Those are a little harder to come by, but there is activity there, and having the industry recognize that that's happening and what it means to their risk, which is really what they're trying to manage is for their risk. So I absolutely believe that undertaking those efforts will pay dividends without a doubt.
Yeah, and I'll just tag on quickly is I think what's important and we're able to achieve in 1182 with the final bill needs to be meaningful, verifiable mitigation. So we're doing some really good mitigation work out in our communities, both at a community level, parcel level. It needs to be recognizable by the insurance companies for it to matter. Most companies, as Commissioner Conway said, have mitigation programs in place where they're going to require you to do A, B, C, and D to get and keep insurance. But within the models, it also has to be done at a scale where it's recognizable. There is an appeals process as part of 1182, so you can report up, because sometimes the companies don't know what you're doing and how is that verified, either through, and it's a systems approach. It can't be a one-off. It can't be a pat on the back. It's got to be something that the science shows us truly makes a difference. So I would say, yes, it matters. And we're trying to figure out ways to really make it matter more and it to be verifiable.
So we've got 4 more really great questions and not enough time. So I'm gonna try and maybe I spitball a couple of these, and the 3 of you can react as we can. I'm gonna say we'll need to stop around 8:57, 8:58, just for some quick closing remarks. But Couple questions. So there was one posed by Sarah Miller. She says she lives in Park County. She said they're working hard to educate community mitigation for both personal property and community property. She says she's considered that historical programs run by local fire departments or communities, like slash drop sites, are being stopped or dropped by local communities. She said these programs helped incentivize mitigation. How can we support local communities to keep these programs going? And then there was another anonymous question that was, to what extent does the concept of managed retreat from the areas of highest risk apply in Colorado? So we're going to throw both of those out there. They're somewhat related, somewhat not, but any quick thoughts on those two?
Just very quickly on the first piece, our hope, one of our hopes with 1182 is if we are getting good information to communities about what works, it will incentivize them to spend the money that they have in places where it actually they're getting a return on the investment that they're putting out there. So if that's slash burns or whatever it may be. As far as the managed retreat piece, I'll have to plead ignorance on that one. I don't know that if I do know it, I forgot it somehow. So I'm not sure I know what that is.
Commissioner, I agree. And there also is a wildfire prepared neighborhood standard that the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety has rolled out this spring. I think working with that, along with the Resiliency Code Board, is they're really setting a standard for statewide community level mitigation. These communities are highly incentivized to do those right things. So we need to help really educate them, let them know what those right things are. And then it's going to make a difference both on insurability, safety, and really having access to grant funding.
I'm not sure why sorry, Carol. I'm not sure why communities would be going backwards from that position. I don't know what would be driving that conversation, but having them engaged and better educated about what it means to their communities certainly ought to drive more efforts in that space. And I don't remember all the bill numbers, but there was another bill this session about, protections for prescribed burns. And I don't know if slash pile burns is characterized as prescribed burn or not, but all in an effort to reduce risk. So we touched on it at the very beginning, but educating individuals and maybe community leaders and others is going to be, exponentially more important going forward. And I don't know what managed retreat is either. So.
All right. Well, I do want to be respectful of time. We did have two more questions, and maybe we can follow up with them with you all over email. Thank you, Chrissy Collins, for your question, and David Bishton. Those are good questions. I think we can exactly. Emily just put in the chat. We can follow up over email. Thank you three for your time today. It's been a good discussion, and I think we've just started to scratch the surface on ways that there can be sort of cross system and cross government and private industry collaboration. Appreciate the three of you taking the time to talk about this timely subject today on Wildfire Awareness Month. And we're going to just quickly close out with some updates on what to expect next month from our webinar. So I appreciate the three of you, Senator Simpson, Carol, and Commissioner Conway, for your insights today, and we'll be in touch. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
So finally, as we close out, our next month's webinar is it's titled Pride in Public Health. It is going to be centered on some research that we did with the Rocky Mountain Equality based in Denver, centered on opportunities for better data collection and data disaggregation in local public health agencies for sexual orientation and gender identity data. So you're not going to want to miss it. Our colleagues are excited to share some of that research with you that they've been doing the last few months. And we'll put a link to that in the chat for folks to register. It's also at the top right of your screen and on our website if you know where to find that on our hot issues page. And then finally, we're also going to be sort of co-hosting a webinar with the National Network of Public Health Institutes later this summer, also in June. And we'll put a link to register for that. And that's going to be a conversation centered on extreme heat and public health, and how we think about the intersection of extreme heat and public health. So be on the lookout for both of those links in the chat, and we look forward to seeing you all on the other side on some of these conversations. Appreciate you all coming out today and being part of this conversation, and onward and upward.